according to Tucker Carlson, the host of America's #1 most watched cable news show.
Anthony Fauci is likely the most powerful physician in the history of this country. He's one of the forces behind the mass quarantines that tanked the economy and put millions out of work. He says it's worth it, though, because the threat is just so profound, so imminent, that you should wear goggles and stop shaking hands.
I know it's difficult, but we're having a lot of suffering, a lot of death. This is inconvenient from an economic and a personal standpoint, but we just have to do it.
Oh, we just have to do it. Really? Then you probably shouldn't take a pass on the question, are protests and riots okay? Unless you're a total fraud, like a complete fraud.
You see, since this COVID-19 and 2020 chaos began, we've all been told to just trust the experts. However, today's guest and New York Times bestselling author claims that we should not be trusting Dr. Anthony Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx, or the Center for Disease Control's Robert R. Redfield. I think the vast majority of us would believe in honest science. However, in June of 2020, 54 of the scientists that worked for Dr. Anthony Fauci's National Institute of Health were fired. And they were fired for failing to disclose their financial ties to the Chinese Communist government. Should we blindly trust these 54 scientists? Additionally, according to the FBI's director, Christopher Wray, nearly 5,000 active FBI counterintelligence cases are currently underway all across these great United States. Think about that. Half of these cases are related to communist China. Should we blindly trust the thousands of government officials and experts being investigated for failing to disclose their treasonous interactions with the communist Chinese government? So the question really is, should we put our trust and faith in Dr. Anthony Fauci and his National Institute of Health that is being overrun by people who are failing to disclose their financial ties to communist China? I ask this question because although you and I never ever elected Dr. Anthony Fauci, he is currently the man whose recommendations have provided the justifications for the social distancing requirements, the shutdown of American businesses, the closing of America's schools, and the shuttering of churches, and the mask mandates that are causing an alarming number of Americans to struggle just to breathe. So as you listen in on today's podcast, I encourage you to wrestle with these ideas. Remember, Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Helms Jr. once famously said, "The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and falsely causing a pandemic, panic." So what should happen to the director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases if he, Dr. Anthony Fauci, is intentionally misleading America's president, America's governors, and the leaders and the American people, thus intentionally causing countless financial harm and actual suicides of hopeless Americans? Are you okay that you just lost your First Amendment right to peaceably assemble? Should we trust Dr. Anthony Fauci? Well, today's guest believes that we should not trust Dr. Anthony Fauci. And she actually has evidence, firsthand evidence, that Dr. Anthony Fauci is corrupt. Today's guest, Dr. Judy Mikovits, wrote an award-winning PhD thesis from George Washington University in 1991 that changed the paradigm of the HIV/AIDS treatment, which turned the disease from a death sentence into a manageable condition for millions of people, including the NBA's great Magic Johnson. And yet she believes we should not trust Dr. Anthony Fauci. Today's guest, Dr. Judy Mikovits, actually had the foreword of her New York Times bestselling book, Plague of Corruption, written by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is the nephew of the former U.S. President John F. Kennedy. And with all that being said, today's guest sincerely believes that Dr. Anthony Fauci should be fired, which means that somebody's lying and somebody is telling the truth. Is Dr. Anthony Fauci lying? Is Dr. Judy Mikovits lying? On today's show, we shall find out.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom. Now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C and Z up on your radio. And now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom.
Yes, and yes. Z, we are in the air everywhere, and this is probably the most important show we've ever done. It is the most important show we've ever done.
I'm so excited.
I'm glad you're here with me because I'm nervous.
I got kind of some goosebumps right then.
We have a cure on today's show for the coronavirus, COVID-19. We have a cure, a real cure, and we have a cure for the fear because Dr. Judy Mikovits is here. Dr. Judy, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous, Clay. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, I want to get the first controversy out of the way here. Some people are calling you Mikovits. Some are calling you Mikovits. I call you great. What do you want us to call you? Let's start off on a good foot here.
It's Mikovits in the U.S. and it's Mikovits in Austria, where the rest of the family is.
Okay, so now that we have that controversial idea out of the way, I'm going to ask you some tough questions. And all I ask is that you are 100% honest 100% of the time, so that way America can listen to what you are saying and decide whether Dr. Anthony Fauci is a fraud or whether you are a fraud. So I'm going to ask some very tough questions that America wants to know. And Z, try to bring some comic relief here, okay?
I'm going to try.
America has agreed to shut down our economy. We have agreed to shut down businesses. We've agreed to shelter in place. We have agreed to all these mask mandates. And the person at the very center of all of this lockdownness is Dr. Anthony Fauci. Dr. Mikovits, should we trust Dr. Anthony Fauci, and why or why not?
Absolutely not. As we've seen, America hasn't agreed to anything. He's dictated this and he's waffled from the beginning. Oh, you don't need to wear masks. Oh, you don't need to lock down. Oh, this is New England Journal of Medicine, February 28th. Oh, this is not anywhere near. This is the common cold. This is the flu. This is not anywhere near what the models predicted. And yet every single day he changes his mind and changes the rules based on no science, no nothing, just control and fear.
Dr. Anthony Fauci has been in his position as the head of the National Institute of Health since 1984, I believe. Do you, in your book, your best-selling book, your New York Times best-selling book, Plague of Corruption, you talk about this, but could you share with our listeners, how did Dr. Anthony Fauci come to power?
Well, yeah, in 1984, he was appointed to lead the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. That's not the National Institutes of Health. That's just one of 23 institutes there. And he was appointed to that position. And he's maintained that position over the last 36 years because he and others have bullied Congress into legislation that, number one, probably the worst thing they did is, NIH employees have no retirement limit, have no age limit on retiring. So he set it up so he could never be removed. And then he set it up with, the Bayh-Dole Act, not him alone, but everybody there. The Bayh-Dole Act in I believe 1983 or 84 said, now NIH employees and Health and Human Services employees can patent discoveries that the taxpayers pay for.
Thrive Nation, let me rewind that real quick so you can hear what she just said, because what she just said blew my mind.
Bayh-Dole Act in I believe 1983 or 84 said, now NIH employees and Health and Human Services employees can patent discoveries that the taxpayers pay for. So
you're saying he can have patents? Dr. Fauci can personally have patents? Patents on what? What kind of things can he have patents on? But before you answer that, I want to say patents one more time, because I just said patents, I think 3 or 4 times in a row. So tell us about the patents that Dr. Fauci can have.
Essentially anything. An immune therapy, a vaccine, a drug. We can talk about remdesivir. He can make deals which are clear conflict of interest.
I know that having a clarification about what words mean The definition of words is super important. So when Dr. Judy just said conflict of interest, what she meant was a situation in which the concerns or aims of two different parties are incompatible. Another way to put it would be, suppose that the man who is telling us that we need to shut down our churches, our businesses, our sporting events, our schools, our way of life until we have a vaccine is the very person who has the patent for the vaccines. That would be a conflict of interest.
And in many cases, what he's doing right now against the law. He can manipulate studies, as he's done with remdesivir. He and others, such as Robert Redfield and head of the CDC, and Deborah Birx, can actually commit criminal fraud, as they did testing HIV vaccines on the military in the early 90s.
Let's just take a moment to marinate on what she just said. She just said that Dr. Deborah Birx, the Scarf Queen, who's on TV a lot, advising America what to do, and Dr. Redfield are criminals. I want to play it back because either Dr. Judy Mikovits is lying or Dr. Birx is lying and Dr. Redfield is lying and Dr. Fauci is lying. I mean, think about what she just said.
He and others, such as Robert Redfield and head of the CDC, and Deborah Birx, can actually commit criminal fraud, as they did testing HIV vaccines on the military in the early 90s.
If Dr. Judy Mikovits is lying, then everything she just said doesn't matter. But if she is in fact telling the truth, that means that you and I have been misled on a almost daily basis. That means that the people that are leading the coronavirus response, Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Redfield, that would mean that the people that we're trusting the most are the worst.
Over and over again, Dr. Fauci has committed criminal fraud, and he continues without any kind of penalty paid whatsoever.
So I want to make sure I get this because there's so much information. Your book is so outstanding. It really rocked my mind. It wasn't a positive, uplifting book. It was like the truth was really dark. Dr. Judy, there is a man by the name of Vince Foster who was a White House. He was a deputy White House counsel under President Bill Clinton. And apparently he had some concerns about Dr. Fauci and the research that was going on. And can you share with the listeners what happened to him?
Well, Vince Foster had concerns about several things that were going on in the Clinton administration. He had a direct knowledge of that. As you know from the book, I grew up in Washington, D.C. area, having moved there when I was 10 years old. And in fact, in 1993, I believe, he was found dead in a park outside of Georgetown off the George Washington Parkway. And that was the first time I had ever heard of the word suicided. And the reason that term came into being is he was said to have killed himself, but my stepbrother was actually the park policeman who found him and was extremely concerned, talking to our family, that in fact he hadn't killed himself, that he had very clearly been killed with his own gun. So that's what happened to Vince Foster.
Dr. Jeff Bradstreet. This gentleman had concerns. Again, Dr. Fauci's telling America we all have to get a vaccine, which, and you're telling us he has the capacity and the ability to have a patent for the very vaccine that he wants us to take, which is a major conflict of interest. Dr. Jeff Bradstreet said, hey, I think I've done my research, and I believe that vaccines are causing autism. Can you explain what happened to Dr. Jeff Bradstreet?
Dr. Bradstreet actually had injured kids, and what Dr. Bradstreet did was he took he read and learned about our work about the retroviruses that were being introduced and strongly associated with autism in susceptible kids, AIDS-like viruses from monkeys and mice and pigs and cows, and he used therapies, antiretroviral therapies, and actually was were healing these kids. And he was also raided by the FDA and I believe drug enforcement agencies, his home. And a few days later in 2016, he also was suicided, said to have shot himself in the chest 2 or 3 times and thrown himself in a river. Of course, that didn't happen. So, Jeff Bradstreet was actually killed for using treatments to cure the kids, curative therapies. And when you cure it, you know what caused it.
This next individual, this is all in your book, Plague of Corruption, which, by the way, I read your book and I actually highlighted the portions of the book and put it up as a PDF so people could see my notes. This next doctor, I don't want to disrespect him by mispronouncing his name, but it's Dr. Kuanteh Zhang, I believe. How do I pronounce his name there?
Kuanteh Zhang.
Dr.
Zhang, and we called him Tay.
Dr. Tay. I would have never guessed that, so thank you for clarifying. And he was Dr. Fauci's second in command, I believe. So what happened to him?
Well, we actually have no idea what he said or what his concerns were. He is said to have either one, shot himself in the head on a Sunday night at his desk, or jumped off a 3-story parking deck at the NIH to his death. And to this day, nobody knows why he was killed, but this was an extremely fine scientist who I firmly believed realized the data actually supported everything and so much more than what we said, and therefore he's going to do the right thing. He was a man and a scientist of integrity, and therefore he had to be eliminated.
Dr. Timothy Cunningham of the Center for Disease Control. He claimed that some of the patients he administered flu shots to died. What happened to him?
Yeah, again, I don't believe he ever says it to Dr. Fauci, but of course, Dr. Fauci there with the heads of the CDC, at the time, I believe it was Julie Gerberding, who went to Merck to make millions on vaccines killing kids, left around there. But he expressed to his superiors concern and publicly concerns about the vaccines. He disappeared within weeks of making that statement. He was found floating in the river a few weeks later, and he was said to have killed himself because of personal life, and he was said to have somehow just killed himself for literally no reason. This again, another fine scientist who had a young man, maybe 35 years old, had everything to live for and a fine career ahead of him.
You found yourself hiding in a boat. Now, as a general rule, a fun way to spend a weekend or a night is not to hide in a boat. Tell us what happened that caused you to have to hide in a boat. Now, at this point, I want to make sure the listeners know you don't have any criminal background. I mean, right? You had no criminal background. You weren't charged with anything. Tell us what happened in the events that led up to you hiding in a boat.
Yeah, this was the day we actually had to escape and hide on a boat. November 9th, 2011 was a couple months after I was fired from my job at a neuroimmune disease institute, a private institute in Nevada, where my studies were funded by the DOD and the NIAID, that is under direction of Tony Fauci. And those studies were very clear about these retroviruses being strongly associated with many cancers. Somebody came to my door at 4 a.m. in the darkness, and my husband answered the door as and I basically, my house was surrounded by God only knows who, and I had to escape out the back door on a boat. We had a 13-foot whaler and a boat dock home in the Channel Islands, so we simply planned an escape and got out on that boat and stayed on one of my friend's boats in the Channel Island harbor until such day as I found a lawyer, thinking that would bring me to safety. But what I learned was all the lawyers were corrupt, and in fact, 10 days later, on November 18th, they came to my house without a warrant, without anything, surrounded my house again, and arrested me and held me in jail for 5 days without bail, with a bail hold, with trying to force me to sign a confession saying I made up the XMRVs and I'd spend the rest of my life doing honest research. Well, I spent all my life doing honest research. And again, what the data proved years later and what we talk about in Plague of Corruption was there was no warrant from anybody, had to have been a federal agency who called me a felony fugitive from justice.
I'm a simple person, and I you said XMRV. Now, it sounds like a vehicle from Star Wars. I know it's not. What is an XMRV? Why was this such a controversial?
I used to drive one.
Do you have an XMRV?
I think I drove one. Yeah.
Dr. Zellner claims to have had an XMRV on the
in
a TIE fighter. But what is an XMRV?
It's a mouse cancer-causing virus that the X stands for xeno, for foreign. So it wasn't found in mice, it was found in people, and it was associated with more than 25 million Americans had the virus, and twice that many with diseases associated with the virus, including deadly cancers, Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's disease, leukemia, lymphoma, breast cancer, prostate cancer, autism, myalgic encephalomyelitis.
Dr. Fauci, and this is not according to clayclark.com, rightwing.com, conspiracytheory.com, Dr. Fauci actually funded the controversial Wuhan laboratory with U.S. dollars. Now, you can verify this. This is Newsweek. I mean, Newsweek has published this. This is common knowledge. Why would Dr. Fauci fund the very laboratory at the epicenter of the COVID outbreak? I mean, what is gain-of-function research? Why is he doing it in China? Just educate us, because we thought the XMRV was a Star Wars vehicle before the show. So tell us, why would he fund this laboratory?
Well, because it was illegal in this country to do this type of research. It's called gain of function studies because what you're doing is you're mixing animal tissues and trying to accelerate the evolution of the viruses, trying to grow them in other animal tissues, which is, again, that's going to be a xenophobic event. Cross-species event allows those viruses to more easily infect other species and could infect humans.
Why would you want to do that? Why would you? I mean, if you called me and you said, Clay Clark, what did you do this weekend? And I said, well, first off, I went to Wuhan, and then what had happened was I took bats out of a cave, and I isolated a naturally occurring virus, and I tried to increase their transmissibility. The only problem is it could cause a pandemic. That's why I'm in Wuhan, because I can't do it in Oklahoma. I mean, that would be weird. Why would somebody want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we've done it. You know, we've developed these kinds of things. I've done that kind of research for most of my career while I was at Fort Detrick and at the U.S. Army Research for Infectious Disease. I was told I was doing it to weaken the virus, to make it weaker, so that we can in fact develop vaccines and therapies and understand why different strains are more pathogenic. But that is why some strains of Ebola is more harmful than other strains of Ebola. So we know that SARS is a killer coronavirus, as is MERS, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. So the idea that the honest scientists could have been told that, in fact, you were simply trying to understand that to prevent the next outbreak. So, and again, Dr. Fauci didn't go in the lab and do this. This is what makes it even more nefarious. He just pays for it, knowing full well it's against the law in this country.
Did you do bad things and maybe not know you were doing bad things? I mean, were you were you part of his plan without knowing you were part of his plan? I mean, do you ever look back at it and go, why was I doing that?
Well, yeah, almost certainly right now, I would say the work I did, particularly in the 90s, where I was working with Ebola strains, and my job was to find a cell line, find an animal cell, animal or human cells, cell lines that grow in the laboratory. These are like little manufacturing plants. So you're not engineering it directly. I'm not cutting, pasting. This is why I never said Dr. Fauci engineered it. I never said he did anything. He published there was a paper published saying NIAID funded it. The Wuhan scientists from North Carolina, scientists from Harvard and Switzerland were on this paper, and they originally got these monkey cell lines, these monkey immortalized cell lines from the USAMRIID facility in Fort Detrick. So what I had worked with those cell lines, and that was one of the cell lines that I discovered could support manufacture. That's growing up large vats of viruses because it was compromised. Yeah, this is what I did in a very dangerous situation. And again, I understood at the level of the inflammation and the immune response. Our work actually was very positive because we saw this disease signature. And if the infection didn't cause this disease signature, it's called a cytokine storm. And Dr. Fauci's talked about it in Newsweek, talking about it, National Geographic. How does SARS-CoV-2 cause disease? Well, it causes almost exactly the disease signature that those Ebola viruses I was working with in Fort Detrick caused, that the XMRVs caused in susceptible individuals to cause disease. So, the question was Fauci covering up the release of Ebola that in 2014 killed 21,000 Liberians? Is he covering up the release of the deliberate infection by injection of XMRVs and murder of 50 million Americans?
If you're saying that he's covering up that he did that, he would be the worst person in the history of the world in terms of the amount of deaths he's caused. So it comes down to either you are dishonest or he is dishonest. And I think the listeners here have to make that decision today and do their research. I have 4 final questions before I open it up for kind of our virtual town hall here. So I have 4 more. Dr. Deborah Birx is on TV. She's always rocking the scarf. She's got the scarf on, she's got just a little sizzle. It's a little sizzle. It gives it, see, it's kind of a signature move. You know what I mean? It's like Prince used to dress a certain way. And Birx, she's kind of branded herself as the scarf queen.
Scarf queen.
Should we trust her?
Absolutely not. She participated with Dr. Redfield back in the 90s experimenting with HIV vaccines that she said were safe, and she experimented on the military, giving millions of people HIV or diseases associated with that in the contaminants in those vaccines. Criminal fraud. Nobody should trust Deborah Birx, Robert Redfield, Tony Fauci. And again, these are people that should have long been retired, should not have even been in the government the last decade. They need to be gone.
So you're saying that the very people that are supposed to be advising America as to what to do to protect itself from COVID-19, one, you're saying that Deborah Birx cannot be trusted. You're saying what she did is criminal. You're saying, point 2, you're saying that Dr. Fauci, you're saying he funded the Wuhan lab. He knows about all the research. He's involved in a massive cover-up. We shouldn't trust him either. Now let's talk about the head of the CDC, Dr. Redfield. This gentleman just yesterday said that we need to open up our schools because more kids are dying from suicide and bad things are happening. I mean, obviously, thank you. What a genius. This guy, can we trust this guy? Should we trust this guy?
No, same reason. 30 years of criminal fraud. He should have been prosecuted in the 90s. We cannot trust them. They are all covering up more than 30 years of crimes perpetrated against the most vulnerable in our country and in our world.
So again, I go back to it. Dr. Fauci either is the worst person in the world ever, if what you're saying is true, or he's, people think he's the best person ever. I mean, he's on the cover of magazines. He's doing now full-page spreads in magazines. He's being hyped up as the nicest guy in the world. Wow. Okay, so my final two questions, and I'm going to open it up for Dr. Z and Dr. Jim Meehan. My wife, a lot of great people have some questions for you here. Is hydroxychloroquine. It seems as though hydroxychloroquine has been proven to be effective. I'm not a doctor. We had Dr. Bartlett on the show, Dr. Richard Bartlett, who was an advisor for Governor Perry of Texas for 7 consecutive years. We had him on the show, and he said, and Dr. Z, you were with me, he said, if you take a $237 treatment that involves budesonide.
And then he also put a
nebulizer to kind of,
he did add an antibiotic, and then I think he did zinc and vitamin C. That was his protocol.
And he said, if you do this stuff, we have the show, we have the protocol, it's $237. He says, if you do that, you won't die. Everyone he's treated hasn't died. And so one of our listeners, Marty, had a family member that got really sick. And he began to recommend the use of this. And when this particular treatment was used, his family member didn't die. And then another person reached out to us and said, hey, I used it. I didn't die. Everybody out there's not dying. So we have a cure for COVID-19, and we have a cure for the fear. We got to stop listening to Fauci and start using treatments. But yet, Dr. Fauci has said, well, nope, we can't open up the country. Democrat governors say we can't open up our states. Democrat mayors say we can't open our states until we have a vaccine. It seems like we want to ignore the treatment and not open up our country again until we have a vaccine. It seems like Dr. Fauci despises hydroxychloroquine or any treatment at all that is not a vaccine. Can you please explain why Dr. Fauci is so against these treatments that are being proven to work to the point where they've banned the distribution of hydroxychloroquine? Just please explain to me. I'm a father of 5. I've researched it. I vetted it. I want to get out of this doom loop. I want our country to be open. I want to provide America with a cure for the virus and a cure for the fear. Please explain why Dr. Fauci is banning all treatments to the point where he's now banning the use of hydroxychloroquine. Please explain it to us.
Because these treatments, and I've got one in my hand called Paximune. This is type 1 interferon, and 2 or 3 sprays in my nose a day will prevent not only COVID-19, but the any kind of flu, Ebola, AIDS is a cure.
Well, spray it for me. Just spray a little into the camera for me. I need a little bit of that right there. This is hot stuff here.
Spray it right into your nasal passages.
Just get it right. Oh, you spray it on there. Okay, it works.
Interferon. Very first thing I did 40 years ago. So there's so much chlorine dioxide, the hydroxychloroquine, the zinc, the vitamin C, the homeopathy, HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen.
Real quick, you're a genius and I'm a slow person. Andrew's going to take notes on the show notes real quick. Andrew, I want you to write down what she's saying because we're literally trying to share with America. We have a cure for the virus and a cure for the fear. We have a cure for the fear. Do not listen to Dr. Anthony Fauci anymore. Do not listen to Dr. Deborah Birx anymore. Do not listen to Redfield anymore. We say, trust the experts. You got to trust the experts. Well, the experts are wrong and corrupt. So, Andrew, let's take note. What should we make sure we're taking here? Give us the treatments. We want to save people.
Absolutely. The first thing we have to do, and this is how we know that what Dr. Fauci is saying is pure evil, is take off the mask. We're already infected with these viruses, and the mask is going to immune suppress and compromise us and kill us. So now they're taking laws that I can't get food, clean water, I can't get on an airplane. I'm infected with the XMRVs. They know it. It's in the book. They've never refuted a word we've said. So the lab workers, the doctors and nurses, if they get any vaccine, Dr. Redfield's promoting a flu vaccine. If you get a flu vaccine and you wear a mask, you will die if you are the vulnerable. That would be me. That would be doctors. That would be nurses.
So you're saying real quick that we already have these things, and you can clarify what they are. These things are in our body right now. Right. I want to go back to how they got in our body, but you're saying that these things that are in our body right now, if we get a vaccine while simultaneously wearing a mask, we will die.
You will drive that cytokine storm and even instant cardiac arrest. And this is what Dr. Timothy Cunningham saw with the flu vaccine in the elderly. And I've done these cases as an expert in vaccine court, showing that cytokine storm. Yes.
So how did these things get in our body? I a lot of times my wife will say, "Don't eat that. It's not organic. Don't eat that." And she's all focused on health. How am I getting these things in my body that when they interact with the vaccine would kill me? How did I get these things in my body?
That they're coming to you from contaminated vaccines.
What?
So our kids are the most vulnerable because they're heavily vaccinated. Yes, these animal viruses, coronaviruses contaminate every flu vaccine. Retroviruses contaminate every live
You're saying the vaccines that are put in my kids are filling them with these things that would interact with another vaccine and cause death. The vaccines
infection by injection.
Okay. This is not a fun show. This is not a fun show. It's not a fun show. I don't. Okay. So now, help me understand this because this is a lot coming at me at one time here. What's in a typical vaccine? I mean, are you putting a little Kool-Aid in there, a little riboflavin, maybe a little vitamin B, a little, what kind of stuff's in these vaccines that Dr. Fauci insists on my 5 kids getting?
Let's see. Let's just take a flu vaccine. You've got 3 or 4 live influenza viruses. You've got bird tissue. If you grew it in chicken eggs, you've got bird viruses. Can have yes, exactly. You've got and bird retroviruses. You can get in different vaccines. In your polio vaccine, you've got monkey viruses.
Monkeys,
including simian virus 40. In your MMRs, the XMRVs throughout the polio vaccines and the MMRs. These live viral vaccines for against RNA viruses grown in animal tissue all have bacteria, mycoplasma, mold, viruses, in addition to the viruses that are supposed to be the vaccines. You've got, in some cases, mercury in flu vaccines, which cripple the immune system, the most toxic element known to man in the flu shots. You've got aluminum. Heavy doses of aluminum in the Prevnar vaccines.
Okay, wait. I'm so sorry. My head's going to explode. I got to duct tape it back together. Can you, when we get off, can you email me something where this is all cited where I could show this to people? Is that a thing?
It comes right off the CDC, the Centers for Dishonesty and Corruption. They have a excipient list. That means everything that's in the virus, that in the vaccine, that's not just the antigen intended to stimulate the immune response.
Can you send me a link to this though? Because again, here's what's going on. A lot of people like me, we're trying to, get our kids to a practice. We're trying to go to church. We're trying to go to the store. And when you talk, and I'm not trying to be offensive to you, I'm just saying when experts talk, scientists, a lot of times we go, because it's like, what? XMRV, isn't that in Star Wars? And
yeah.
Aluminum, and we're just like, whatever. And so we're told blindly trust the experts. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pass the mic over to Dr. Robert Zellner. And Dr. Robert Zellner is... he's a fake doctor. He's an optometrist.
Like Diet Coke. I'm like the Diet Coke to Coke.
We're going to upgrade to a real doctor, Dr. Jim Meehan, in a minute. We're just kind of upgrading.
The real thing is coming
We
soon
start
after
with
me.
the dumbest person in the room, me. I took algebra, 3 times. Not that smart. I go first, and then it gets better from here. This was the bottom. So, Z, I'm going to pass the mic and the camera over to you, and now you can begin to interrogate the great one, Dr. Judy Mikovits.
Dr. Judy, first, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for all the work that you're doing, the books you're writing, all the information that you are getting out. So Dr. Judy, I want to ask you your professional opinion. You obviously know viruses very well. And if you had to rate, I want to give you a few viruses and I want you to rate them. And the way you're going to rate them is 10 being killer, worst thing happening, run, get a basement and don't leave it, quarantine yourself.
And I'll get the sound
everybody.
effects ready. I'll get the sound effects
And
ready.
that's a number 10. That's like this is a serious mamba jamba. It's coming. There's nothing worse. It's bad. And then over here we have we'll call it 0, means that it's no big deal. It's just a little virus.
It's the guy who calls in to work because he thinks he might be getting sick soon.
Right. We'll call that a 0 over here on the virus scale. I'm sure there's some viruses out there that you look at and go, that's no big deal. That's nothing.
I got the trigger ready.
My gosh, I can beat that with my pinky and one arm tied behind my back. If that's the scale, where would the common influenza that comes around every year, where would that land on that scale?
A 0 or a 1. It's a nothing. We get to a couple days off if you get it.
Oh, it's a nothing.
Okay, now where would COVID-19, that particular virus, land on that scale in your opinion?
Yeah, SARS-CoV-2 is even lower than a nothing, lower than influenza. Influenza is more.
So how now the numbers are out and the death rates are, of course, plummeting as more and more healthy people are getting it. So why all the fear? Why? Who's driving that fear?
Clearly, this is political control. It's Dr. Fauci, Dr. Redfield, Dr. Birx, the criminals in the CDC, FDA, and NIAID, NIH, driving this to literally kill the tens of millions they've already injured with the vaccines and drive their agenda. The masks will kill. Everything about this. This is totally political. And yeah, if you have to say it, we hate Trump that much, or that will destroy our country. That will destroy. We can afford to lose the most vulnerable.
Now, see, I'm going to put this on the show notes, so this will be on the screen for the folks to check out. But 54 scientists were fired during the same day who worked for the National Institute of Health. 54 scientists were fired for failing to disclose that they are being paid by the communist Chinese. 54 scientists. Now, our FBI director, Wray, W-R-A-Y, Christopher Wray, he said there's now 5,000 active counterintelligence cases underway, and most of them involve people failing to disclose they're working for the communist Chinese. So again, the virus came from the Wuhan lab. The guy who funded the Wuhan lab is Dr. Fauci. People that know Dr. Fauci keep dying when they oppose him or what he's talking about. And then there's this weird connection between Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates. Z, are you in agreement with me? There are many doctors around the world. More than
many,
7.
Many.
They could have called you. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation could have called Dr. Jim Meehan. They could have called you.
Yeah.
Well, you're a fake doctor. You're an optometrist.
I'm an optometrist,
They would have called a real doctor.
Yeah,
they could have called anybody, but they called Dr. Fauci and said, Dr. Fauci, could you serve on the Leadership Council? So it's on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation website. I'm putting a link up here. Does Dr. Fauci own the patent to these vaccines he wants us to have? Does he? Tell me he doesn't. Does he have the patents?
He absolutely does.
He does?
Absolutely.
How can you prove it?
I think it's literally, and so does Bill Gates. It's literally, I have the patent right there, a foundation he set up, and Tony Fauci's got the right there.
So you mean the guy who? Let me just make sure I get it, because I'm a simple man. Judy, if I came to your home, and I know that would be a far stretch because you wouldn't let me in, I get it. But if I did come to your home, I knock. Dr. Mikovits, I'm with the mice patrol here, and I regret to inform you that I unfortunately accidentally created or released mice into your home, which has caused a massive home invasion, a home infestation, and so you're going to need to shut your home down now because of the mice infestation that I have caused. But the good news is I have a product and a vaccine, a treatment that will cure your home of the mice outbreak pandemic. So you can trust me. No conflict of interest here. I just accidentally released an infestation of mice into your home, and you're going to need to shut it down until you buy my product that I made, that I have the patent to, that is going to cure your home of the virus. And now, I've never tested it before, and many of the products I've made in the past have killed people, but this is different because this is 2020, and I'm here, and I'm in charge. So hopefully that makes sense. And I run around to all the neighbors' house. You watch me climb into the windows and unleash mice and roaches, and then you're like, that's the guy who's putting the roaches and the mice in the houses is the guy who, hey, Dr. Judy, I just want you to know I just happen to be in the area. Didn't know if you had a mouse problem in the last hour or so. I mean, it's like the guy who has the solution for the problem is the guy who's making the problem, Z. It's almost like Fauci has the patent to the virus he created.
Okay, so wait a second. So now you're saying we went from flatten the curve, stay home, flatten the curve, to now it has to be a vaccine. Shut everything down until we have a vaccine, and he's the one potentially that has the vaccine patent that he's now going to recommend to the world that everybody should have. And I even heard something even more nefarious, is that Gates was suggesting that you had to have proof that you've had the vaccine to be able to.
Can you talk about this? Because I have it on the screen. I'm going to make sure Andrew in the editing process will put this on the screen. This is a new, very nefarious thing. This is part of what Al Gore is calling the Great Reset. He's calling this, Alvin Gore is calling this the Global Reset. This is not clayclark.com. It's called the Global Reset. And I'll put a link to the articles, and I know Andrew will put it all up on the screen so the listeners can look at this. But this is in Fox News, and they're calling for this thing called it's an immunization stamp, a trust stamp. What is that all about? Can you comment on that, man? This whole show's freaking me out. I just wanted to have like a light show, like the macaroni of shows. What is this trust stamp about?
I mean, that is the agenda to force the vaccination of the world, and you have to have proof if you want to have a job or get on a plane. I mean, we're seeing the same thing play out. He did the exact same thing with the drug remdesivir, which he also, and the NIH has patent and is making a tremendous amount of money, manipulated the clinical trials to cover up the injury the drug is doing, then goes quickly through the FDA for approval when it only when it doesn't do anywhere near as well as hydroxychloroquine or alpha interferon at thousands of dollars instead of pennies. So he's done the same thing with masks. He's done the same thing. So of course, now if he gets us all to comply and bow down with these other things in order to get our life back, then we'll take the vaccine, we'll take the shot, and we'll show the stamp in order to live, if you should survive the shot, because you probably won't.
Now, the remdesivir, that I looked into that so I could be nice and prepared for today's show. But remdesivir, this company that makes the remdesivir is called Gilead. And Gilead has a huge investor in the company, a guy who really has invested. He's all in. He believes in remdesivir. It's almost like he knows everyone's going to need it. His name is George Soros. Now, George Soros is also the man funding Black Lives Matter. George Soros is also the man who admitted on 60 Minutes that he was a Nazi at the age of 14.
But survival carried a heavy price tag. While hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews were being shipped off to the death camps, George Soros accompanied his phony godfather on his appointed rounds, confiscating property from the Jews. These are pictures from 1944 of what happened to George Soros's friends and neighbors.
You're a Hungarian Jew who escaped the Holocaust by posing as a Christian.
Right.
And you watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps.
Right.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. No.
No feeling of guilt?
No.
Also, Gilead, the company that owns the patent for remdesivir, is endorsed and involved in a drug purchasing group called Unitaid, which is financed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Imagine that.
In conjunction with the Clinton Health Access Initiative. And so I don't know what to call it, if it's the access of evil, but it seems to me like Bill Gates spent a lot of time with Mr. Epstein, and so did the Clintons.
Microsoft, Bill Gates. Gates made at least 3 visits to Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse. He called Epstein and his life, quote, intriguing in an email. That's intriguing on its own. Will we learn more? And what about former Harvard president and Obama administration official Larry Summers, former Secretary of the Treasury under Bill Clinton? Summers flew on Epstein's plane and then got him to donate tens of millions of dollars to Harvard University, where Epstein did not go. And needless to say, there was Bill Clinton himself, who often flew on Epstein's plane and then lied about it. We deserve, in fact, we have a right to know what all of these people really knew about Jeffrey Epstein.
And I just wanted to have a fun show. I wanted this to be more fun.
That horse is left
I'm going to pass the mic over here to Dr. Jim Meehan. Dr. Jim, before you begin interrogating our guest, we'll put your credits on. We'll put your credentials on the screen. Can you share with the listeners what your background is?
Yeah, well, I'm a medical doctor and an ophthalmologist by training. I'm a former medical editor. I specialize in ocular inflammation and immunology. I used to edit a medical journal of ocular inflammation and immunology, so I know a lot about the immune system, diseases and infections, and what they do to our immune system. And what I'd like to say in my contribution is to support so much of what Dr. Judy Mikovits has contributed to the science. She is a scientist of the highest integrity. What she found and what she exposed, which is such an inconvenient truth for this industry, is that she found that there were viral contaminants in vaccines that are being administered to almost every child in America and many children in the world. That XMRV virus contaminates many of our viruses, and it's just one of many. And the reason that her career was assassinated by this deep state cabal that is running our public health institutions is because they had to bury that inconvenient truth. They do not want the public to know that so many of the 54% of children that are suffering from one or more of 21 chronic diseases might have had their disease process, their cancers, their leukemias, their autoimmune diseases, initiated by the injection of these vaccines that are contaminated with viral contaminants.
I would like for you to discuss, and I'll tee it up to Dr. Judy, and then I just want to kind of see where this goes here, and then we're going to go to James, Attorney James. He's an attorney who moved here from New York City to help me file some sort of legal action to ban masks in Tulsa. And I had the passion to do it when I went to a little store in Tulsa to get a suit and a tie, and I go in there, and the woman literally looked like she was going to pass out, who was trying to help me get all fitted, and I felt terrible. And she said, she just looked bad, and I said, "Are you okay?" She's like, "I can't breathe. I have a thing. I've got some asthma. I can't breathe." And I said, "Well, if you want to take that off, that's totally fine." And she was like, are you? I mean, it was almost like I had freed her. And so I realized this is not good. Our stylists at our haircut chain, they're telling me they can't breathe. People are passing out. Bad things are happening. Dr. Judy, how bad is it for somebody to wear a mask?
It's horrific for somebody to wear a mask if they are one of the 50% of Americans that have these chronic diseases, including me.
I believe what she just said is that wearing a mask is very bad for 50% of the population. Now, if Dr. Judy Mikovits is telling the truth, that would mean that Dr. Deborah Birx and Dr. Fauci, who are very smart, are nefariously, intentionally lying to you and putting you at further risk of dying and succumbing to COVID-19 as a result of wearing the very masks that they are now telling you to wear. So let's listen to that clip one more time. I want you to hear what Dr. Judy Mikovits just said.
It's horrific for somebody to wear a mask if they are one of the 50% of Americans that have these chronic diseases, including me.
Folks, somebody's lying. Is it Dr. Deborah Birx and Dr. Fauci, or is it Dr. Judy Mikovits? Who's telling the truth and who's lying to you? By the way, who has the ability to have a patent for the very vaccine that they are now going to require you to take? Is it Dr. Judy Mikovits or Dr. Fauci? Listen to what she just said one more time. Let the profundity of this moment sink into your cranium and ask yourself, who's telling the truth, Dr. Judy or Dr. Fauci?
It's horrific for somebody to wear a mask if they are one of the 50% of Americans that have these chronic diseases, including me, including the lab workers, nurses, and doctors who've been infected by injection. And I mean with COVID-19. That's the point. If you wear the mask, you reactivate the virus, you further cripple your immune system, you spread the disease through your body. So my mask makes me sick, your mask makes you sick, and neither mask prevents the spread. In fact, they accelerate the spread of disease. So it is the masks driving the resurgence and nothing else, because we've already been injected with the COVID-19.
I think the idea that we should blindly trust experts is a lot like telling people, hey, listen, Judy, here's the deal. You need to trust every hairstylist I've ever hired. Because they're professionals.
They are.
I mean, they're hair wizards. They're trained. They're certified. Because I have, and I'm just telling you things that have happened since I've run a haircut business that are real things. I can't make them up. I've caught them having sex with each other when they're married to somebody else. I've caught them stealing money. And these are multiple people. I've had a stylist forget to tell me that his real name is not the name he went by, and that he, by the way, didn't serve in the military, and, oh, by the way, is a felon. I mean, so just saying blindly trust scientists. I mean, in Tulsa, our health director there, Dr. Dart, he got his degree online. Jim Meehan, please talk about Dr. Dart, because I want Judy to hear this. This is comical. The man who's telling Tulsa we need to wear a mask. Please explain his background.
Yeah, so I think all of us in Tulsa, the executive director of the Tulsa Health Department, who is counseling our mayor to mandatory mask the community, the population here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we all assumed that his doctorate was a medical doctor, that he had some kind of background and legitimate training.
Right, legitimate training.
Yeah. And in fact, his only biological science training was his undergraduate degree in 1977, which, Dr. Judy, I think you would recognize a lot has changed since 1977. He actually got a health business administration degree online from an online university in 1 year, 1.5 years. And that's the guy that is making all the medical decisions to impose a medical intervention on the community of Tulsa. That's the kind of experts that we're listening to in this situation.
While he works with a mayor who's in favor of the Bloomberg plan.
That's right.
Or the Rockefeller plan. I mean,
one of his counselors that he listens to deeply is President Barack.
Unbelievable. I mean, we have in our city, we have a Republican mayor, or pretended to be a Republican mayor, who openly wrote an op-ed in the New York Times talking about how he's going to be strict and he's going to shut us down. He wants to be the most progressive
conservative mayor.
So meanwhile, we have Dr. Judy, we've got Dr. Meehan, got Dr. Zellner. Everybody's a doctor except for me. We've got an attorney. Everybody is a professional except for me. So James, please explain your first and last name and how long you've been an attorney, sir.
First name is James. Last name is DiCristofaro. I've been an attorney for coming up on 20 years.
And you are helping us lift the mask mandate in Tulsa. So I'm sure you have a ton of questions, because we are going to win this thing in Tulsa. And we are going to create a momentum all across the nation, because we now know we can change the conversation. We have a cure for the virus. We have a cure for the fear. Stop listening to Fauci. Start taking treatments. They're $237. And I don't make a commission to pitch them to you. So what questions do you have that would fill in the gaps as you begin to do this filing to end this injustice and lift the mask mandate? I'm sure you have questions for Dr. Judy.
I do. First off, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Judy, for staying the course, for jeopardizing and putting at risk everything that you've put at risk. And I'll tell you that I had a very, very small sliver of an experience that I assume that you've had. And it's, Clay, do you know our first podcast that you and I did together, it was 5 months ago.
Really?
And it was on the coronavirus stuff.
And now we're best friends.
And
you're in my house.
And also, Judy, I want to also thank you, while he's doing a thank you there, for staying alive. Amen. It seems like a lot of people that are close to Fauci have not done a very good job of doing that. So thank you for dodging whatever you needed to dodge to stay alive.
For being a good boat escape artist.
Yes.
Yeah, that was thanks to Frank Rossetti. I called him up that day and said, Frank, what do I do? He said, you idiot, you have a boat that can't take you off the water. I'm like, oh yeah, right. And I hang up at 4 a.m. It worked.
I mean, as a result of that podcast that you and I did, Clay, it was I lost an attorney that worked for me because she disagreed with the things that I was saying on the podcast, and I thought it was pretty innocuous. And then, I got torn a new eye socket on a group text chat that I'm on shortly after I expressed some of my views. I was told to keep quiet and keep my views to myself, and I didn't, and I moved here. So, anyway, so again, thank you for all that you've put at risk.
Amen.
I can just
We're praying for
imagine
you.
what you've done. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
thanks.
I'd like-
I certainly need those prayers, because what I usually say when somebody asks me, why are you still alive? I say, because God has a sense of humor. The fun part is I've already lost everything, so I've got nothing to lose. So this is actually fun. We're good, and we're exposing in every word. We've written a book, The Case Against the Mask. My colleague and writer Kent Heckenlively, the attorney, put together The Case Against the Mask, and we quote Dr. Fauci saying you don't need it, and many other studies. It's an 80-page pamphlet. They're available from Amazon. They might cost $10, and I'll mail them to you, and you can send them around and put them everywhere so that
Amen.
they support absolutely what you say and everything that Dr.
The Case
Fauci
Against
says.
the Mask. I would recommend then that James would probably need to get this book, because if he's going to be fighting this in the court system, he's going to have to know what's in this book, and I'll put a link to it on the show notes. James, what questions would you have for Dr. Judy?
Well, the first, I have two. The first, it relates to what you just said, Dr. Judy, about Fauci saying that we don't need a mask and then flip-flopping all around. Do you think that it's a valid justification? I believe that this is the justification that they used, which was, we want to make sure that we have enough masks for the frontliners, which is why I didn't recommend it in the first place.
Absolutely not. Total lie. We know personal protective equipment, and again, not one of the masks, not the N95 or anything else, stops the spread of the coronaviruses and the influenza viruses. As it was said pretty well, I forgot who said it. It's like a chain link fence stopping a mosquito. Or no-see-ums there in Oklahoma. No, not going to happen. It is immune suppressing. It is causing disease. It is causing injury, and it spreading COVID-19. And he knew it from the beginning, and he knows it all along.
Okay, does that satisfy your curiosity?
With that question, yes. And then I just have one more if I could.
Absolutely.
Okay. And this relates to access to information and the reliability of the information, the trustworthiness of the information, and the trustworthiness of the speaker, which is what I think it all comes down to, is who's doing the speaking here and what's the motivation behind it. Like you said, Dr. Judy, you have nothing to lose here. So, and Clay has vetted your credibility. I've watched the pandemic, and I completely believe in and agree with your message. Now, I know from personal experience from wearing a mask that I can't breathe when I put it on. Clay just told you about an experience with the attendant in the clothing store, and my own experience tells me that when I put a mask on, if I can't breathe, it means that there's a decrease in oxygen. There's an issue with me breathing. It's got to be some sort of oxygen. It's got to be the quantity of the air. I don't know. I don't need to be a doctor, I think, to talk about that. The hotter it gets, the more uncomfortable it gets. When I'm walking around the streets of Manhattan and it's 95 degrees outside, I can't breathe. When I'm sitting in a plane, I always take it off, and I get told 15, 20 times to put it back on. I do, and I take it off right when they walk by. They're more concerned, and I had my laptop out and my bag out and my seatbelt off, and the only thing that they cared about was the mask. Anyway, so we're talking about reliability of information. I want to know, and I'll tell you where I looked, and I know what my answer is. If wearing a mask decrease oxygen levels. Now, I know that the answer is yes. Clay, I watched that link that you sent to me from our friend in Canada who filmed it with the oxygen level.
Canadian
measure.
CPA has been doing tests all week to prove that the oxygen levels are dangerously low when you wear that mask too long.
Right. OSHA requires that they be 19.5% or more oxygen in the air, and when it's less, they have all of these regulations and requirements. And to go through this whole testing. I mean, the rules are very, very extensive in OSHA. But I just Googled, do masks cause, well, hold on. Do masks decrease oxygen levels? I Googled this. The first thing that came up was an article from the American Lung Association. And I scroll down because that was the question I was looking for. It says, this is what the article from the American Lung Association said. Do masks cause low oxygen levels? And the answer was absolutely not. Those are the first two letters of the paragraph. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So if somebody is going to look this up on face value, the first thing that comes up on Google is the American Lung Association. Oh my goodness, that's got to be very, very trustworthy. If the American Lung Association says this, then my God, that's all that I have to do. I don't have to look any further. And this is what, 99% of Americans are doing. And I think that it's a disservice to the American public. I think that, without people like Clay and other people in this room who want to get to the truth, I think it's doing everybody a disservice to have the American Lung Association say something like that. So let me just get to the question. Where can we find reliable information?
Well, I think most importantly, today's reliable information are going to be from independent sources who aren't funded by the government. And I can send you links in that. Our book has reliable information in that every bit of it was quoted from OSHA standards. Of course, our scientific journals are now fake news because they're supported by this cabal, by the government. That's why, by Tony Fauci, NIAID, the American Lung Association. Of course, the masks decrease oxygen. My husband has COPD, a lung disease. Never before, until 2020, do these publications come out and say, "Oh, we were all wrong about the last 100 years in personal protective equipment." So,
and Dr. Judy,
that's the unfortunate thing.
What I want to mention is Dr. Jim Meehan took the time to write a very thoughtful paper with links. It's all cited, Dr. Jim. It's called "Why Healthy People Should Not Wear Masks," and I'm going to make that available. Anybody who's listening to this show, if you will email me, info@thrivetimeshow.com, anything that we have said during this show that you don't believe, I'm citing it all for you. I have an agenda to save America. I will send it to you. I will do this. We have a team standing by. We'll send it to you. I have nothing to sell you. I'm gonna cite everything. But what I want to do now is I want to have my wife ask some questions, because my wife turns out to not be an attorney, but she does a harder job than that. She raises 5 kids, and there's concerns.
6 if you count you.
Yeah, there's 6. Well, I had probably a little extra monkey in my vaccine, so I'm kind of more of a man, bear, pig, monkey kind of guy.
Yeah, kind
anyway,
of, sort of. Yeah.
So my wife has some questions, because she's raising kids with me, but as a mom, you kind of think about your kids, their health. I'm sure she represents a lot of the moms out there that have questions. Vanessa, what questions would you have for the good Dr. Judy?
I feel like since we're on masks, I should ask about masks, but I'm pretty. I guess I feel pretty solid that I don't want my kids wearing masks. And so go ahead.
It's dangerous for your kids to wear masks.
Yes. And so that's exactly the situation that we're in with going back to school. And we've homeschooled our kids until this past year, and they absolutely love the school they're in, but they are required to wear masks. So Dr. Meehan is actually helping us out on that front, examine the kids and get us some notes. So going back to
those goobers actually agreed to wearing masks at that school. Did the school actually say they have to wear masks at that school?
Well, our kids are gonna have notes.
But the other students have to. Is this new? Is this new thing?
Not new.
Oh, she's sneaky, Dr. Judy. She didn't tell me this because she knew I would have freaked out. And because we're on a live show, I'm not going to freak out now. I bundle the emotions.
Hey, send them to Victory. That's where they're not requiring masks. So.
Havana, our oldest school, is not requiring masks.
Now, for the folks out there who are tuning in for the first time, I want everybody out there to know it is a fact that Dr. Fauci, just during March of this year, during an appearance on 60 Minutes, Dr. Anthony Fauci, during his appearance on 60 Minutes, said this about wearing masks.
There's a lot of confusion among people and misinformation surrounding face masks. Can you discuss that?
The masks are important for someone who's infected to prevent them from infecting someone else. Now, when you see people and look at the films in China and South Korea, whatever, everybody's wearing a mask. Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course. But when you think masks, you should think of healthcare providers needing them and people who are ill.
Oh, I want to pull our kids out of school. I cannot stand paying for private.
And it's not for sure.
Dr. Mikovits, just kind of switching gears. I want to talk about the process of manufacturing a cell line that, or just kind of educate me, because I don't quite understand why we would want to be creating a virus. I just don't get it. Why would Dr. Fauci? Why would we want to create a virus?
That's why we discuss, Dr. Fauci's role in that, because the cell line that they manufactured it in 200-liter fermenters, like a craft beer, or this is a lot of virus you're growing. So with that lot of virus that you're growing, that's a lot of chance for escape and aerosolization, and again, they bought this. In the paper published in 2015, Wuhan said they originally got the manufacturing facility, the cell line, from Fort Detrick. Well, we've been mixing bat viruses in that cell line in Fort Detrick since the mid-90s. So you have to ask yourself, why didn't they just buy a clean cell line from there's something called ATCC that holds all the little cell lines, and they're guaranteed to be uncontaminated and clean. If they weren't doing anything wrong, why didn't they manufacture the viruses and culture the bat tissues with the ones that are guaranteed to be clean of other contaminants? Why did they use the one from Fort Detrick under the direction and paid for by Tony Fauci, which could have had Ebola and other bat viruses and other coronaviruses and things that created this nightmare? Certainly there's HIV sequences in there from simian, from monkeys.
But you're saying, but typically they would get something that is known to be clean. You're saying, right? This is something they characteristically would not do.
Characteristically, you would just buy the cell line to do your research, and it's guaranteed clean from a company called ATCC in Virginia. And hey, they didn't do that. They wanted the cells that were originally sent from Fort Detrick. So
and that's not normal. It just looks suspect. Why did they do it this way? So another follow-up question, and I don't know.
So with respect to releasing it, both the Wuhan facility and Fort Detrick were shut down for safety violations in 2018 and 19.
I want to shut down Fauci for safety violations. This guy's a weasel. He's a weasel.
He's a rabid
weasel.
weasel.
I have three follow-up questions, and we've got a great guest. He's a pastor of a church. And are you a believer in Christ? Do you believe in Christ there, Judy?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're a Christian. Okay, we're on the same team. I'm feeling less scary about my next question here, but just the whole thing is freaking me out. There's a lot of people, myself included, who've never talked to Dr. Fauci. And I was reading your book, and I understand that one time you got a call from Dr. Fauci. What did he say to you, and what was that conversation like? I just want for the listeners out there, I want them to know your background, because you were working for somebody at the time, and you got a call from Fauci. Can you tell us who you worked for at the time and why you got a call from Dr. Fauci?
At the time, I was working as a technician in the National Cancer Institute at Frederick, Maryland with my boss, and I was the only technician working for him in 1983 or 84 when I got this call, and that's Dr. Frank Rossetti, and he's considered the father of human disease-causing retroviruses because he isolated them first and associated them with disease.
So why did Fauci call you? What was he?
Well,
was he just kind of?
He actually called Frank.
He called Frank.
And Frank was out of town. Dr. Rossetti was out of town, and I answered the phone. And he said, "I understand you have a paper in press, or Dr. Rossetti, has a paper in press for confirming Luc Montagnier, the Nobel laureate, the isolation of HIV. They called it LAV at the time, lymphadenopathy virus, the retroviruses that is associated with AIDS. Causative agent, a causative agent, not the causative agent for AIDS. So at any rate, he said, well, give me the paper. And he had another, and he worked at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. He's head of that institute at the time. I don't know if he was a head at the time, but at any rate, I'm working for the National Cancer Institute. And so it's like, no, Dr. Rossetti's out of town, and it's unethical to give you the paper because it's confidential. It's in press.
So it's kind of like you have almost like you are the inventor of something, is what Rossetti was, kind of like the inventor of something. And Dr. Fauci's going, hey, since he's out of town, I need the paper. I need the stuff. I need the research. And you're saying, it's unethical to give the paper, correct?
Absolutely. I'm not an author on the paper because I'm not a PhD. I'm a technician. So I'm like, no. But and he and Dr. Gallo was also on the phone. Who is at the NCI, it literally there's dozens of books written about how Dr. Gallo and Dr. Fauci contributed to killing millions of people worldwide while they fought about who discovered the disease, because of course Fauci and Gallo eventually got the paper, figured out how to do it, could
real quick, you said that
engineer the discovery and claim they discovered the virus.
You just said something real quick that was crazy. You just said there's books written about how Dr. Fauci may have been responsible for killing hundreds of millions of people.
Worldwide, the failure to be able to publish that paper in a timely manner, which would have been done, and have a diagnostic test and have treatments that could have been used, was stopped so that they could reverse engineer, say they discovered it, and have the patents, have the money.
And these are the kinds of treatments that allowed Magic Johnson to not succumb to HIV, AIDS. Dr. Fauci was withholding these. He's saying, no, we can't release these treatments. We know we have these treatments, but we can't release them. Is that what you're saying?
Well, basically withholding the data. So it's all about information. So it's about twisting the data and covering up the data and refusing to allow other papers to get published while they publish the papers and therefore get the credits and the patents and on and on. So it's an information control, which is what he's doing right now. Conflicted in interest, and so he's causing millions of deaths around the world right now by by censoring people like me and many other doctors worldwide with the information, such that the AMA says masks are great.
Now, Dr. Rand Paul, Senator Dr. Rand Paul, recently has been trying to pin down Fauci on something. Dr. Jim Jordan's trying to get a straight answer out of him. And see, he's kind of swerving. He's kind of shifty, Dr. Fauci. He's shifty. He's also kind of small, too, so he's hard to kind of wrangle. He's a small guy. He's a shifty guy. And I'm going to insert the audio. And Andrew, I want you to insert the audio during this portion of the video, the audio and video of Jim Jordan just asking Dr. Fauci the direct question for almost 5 consecutive minutes. It's like, should we ban riots and protests? If you're going to ban churches, is it bad to have riots and protests? He's like, Fauci's like, I'm not going to say we should ban riots and protests. And he's like, but you have told us that we should ban churches and baseball games. Why can't we say we should ban riots and protests? And Fauci just wouldn't answer the question.
Government stopping people from going to church, Dr. Fauci?
Yeah.
Last week in the Calvary Chapel case, 5 liberals on the Supreme Court said it was okay for Nevada to limit church services. Justice Gorsuch said it best. He said, there's no world in which the Constitution permits Nevada to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. I'm just asking, is there a world where the Constitution says you can favor one First Amendment liberty, protesting, over another, practicing your faith?
I'm not favoring anybody over anybody. I'm just making a statement that's a broad statement that avoid crowds of any type, no matter where you are, because that leads to the acquisition and transmission. And I don't judge one crowd versus another crowd. When you're in a crowd, particularly if you're not wearing a mask, that induces the spread.
It's a simple question, doctor. Should we limit the protests? Government is obviously limiting people going to church. And look, there's been no violence that I can see at church. I haven't seen people during a church service go out and harm police officers or burn buildings. But we know that, I mean, for 63 days, 9 weeks, it's been happening in Portland.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one night in Chicago, 49 officers were injured. But no limit to protests. But boy, you can't go to church on Sunday.
I don't know how many times I can answer that. I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm just going to tell you.
You've opined on a lot of things, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, but I've never
This
said
is something
to
that
limit
directly impacts the spread of the virus, and I'm asking your position on the protest.
Yeah, I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm telling you what it is, the danger. And you can make your own conclusion about that. You should stay away from crowds, no matter where the crowds are.
Government has stopped people from going to work. In fact, just in New Jersey 4 days ago, Ian Smith, Frank Trombetta were arrested for trying to operate their business, their gym. They were arrested. But my bet is if these two individuals who own this gym were outside just in front of their gym, and all the people who were working out in their gym were outside protesting, they'd been just fine. But because they were in the gym working out, actually running their business, they got arrested. You think that's okay?
You know, I'm not going to opine on who gets arrested and who does not. I mean, you get where I'm going. I'm telling you, as a public health official, I say crowds.
Do you see the inconsistency, though, Dr. Fauci?
There's no inconsistency, Congressman.
So you're allowed to protest millions of people on one day in crowds yelling, screaming, but you try to run your business, you get arrested? And if you stood right outside of that same business and protested, you wouldn't get arrested? You don't see an inconsistency there?
I don't understand what you're asking me as a public health official to opine on who should get arrested or not. That's not my position. You could ask it as much as you want.
You've advocated for certain
businesses.
You've advocated for certain businesses to be shut down. I'm just asking you on your position on the protest. I haven't seen one. We've heard a lot about hair salons. I haven't seen one hairstylist who, between haircuts, goes out and attacks police or sets something on fire. But we've seen all kinds of that stuff during protests, and we know the protest actually increased the spread of the virus. You've said that.
I said crowds. I didn't say specifically. I didn't say protests do anything.
So the protests don't increase the spread of the virus?
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I just want an answer to the question. Do the protests increase the spread of the virus?
I don't have any scientific evidence that anything. I can tell you that crowds are known, particularly when you don't have a mask, to increase the acquisition and transmission. No matter what the crowd is.
So you don't have a position on whether the protests increase the spread of the virus or don't increase the spread of the virus?
I'm saying that crowds, wherever the crowds are, can give you an increased probability that there's going to be acquisition and transmission.
But do you understand Americans' concern? Protesting, particularly according to the Democrats, is just fine, but you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't go to church. There's limits placed on all three of those fundamental activities, First Amendment activities, but protesting is just fine.
So I'm going to look at you here with my good eye. I'm just going to see if you're being honest. Because really it comes down to, see, look at this. It comes down to, is she telling the truth or is Fauci? Because if she's right, then Fauci's wrong. I got my good eye, my bad eye. I don't even know who you are, but with the good eye.
You know, I play poker, so I'll catch you if you try. I'll catch your tail. Maybe she has a tail.
We should play a staring game. How can we tell? Because, I mean, either you're lying with no financial gain. Well, you have nothing to gain out of this. Either you're lying and you're putting yourself in a personal hell so that you can just tear down a guy's legacy, or the guy who stands to benefit the most from the vaccine is lying. The motive. It comes down to the motive.
Always follow the money.
This is like Perry Mason.
Always follow the money.
It appears. See, I was looking with my good eye. It appears as though she's being honest. And now I'm going to bring up a pastor here as we wrap up today's show. This is Pastor Jackson, Pastor Action Jackson. He's one of these controversial pastors.
Oh yeah.
Who has decided to keep his church open.
Crazy.
And he's actually hosting an event so that the Mayor or Ken Reddick, who wants to be the new mayor of Tulsa, to replace Tulsa's current mayor, G.T. Bynum, who wants to mandate masks. He's hosting an event to support this guy.
He did mandate masks. He didn't
Pastor,
want to.
can
He
you
did.
introduce yourself to Dr. Judy? Because this is the woman who is gone viral. All of her videos get deleted. She goes viral and they get deleted. She's the best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author of the book Plague of Corruption. She's an award-winning expert in infectious diseases. I can go on and on. Sir, will you introduce yourself just so she has some context as to who you are?
Yes, my name is Jackson Lawmeyer. I'm the pastor of Sheridan Church here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and just want to say thanks for all that you're doing, standing up and fighting the good fight, and appreciate what you're doing. And what we're doing here in Tulsa is we have a current mayor that has disguised himself as a Republican.
True.
And, I wish he was just honest.
Maybe it's an easier decision.
Just be a Democrat.
Just say you are.
Just say you are.
Say you're a communist.
Say you're a communist, yeah.
No, but I mean, listen, I got his theme song. This is a G.T. Bynum's commercial. Here we go.
Yeah, ready.
Hello, I'm G.T. Bynum.
No, he doesn't have that deep a voice.
And
Hello,
I'm G.T. Bynum. Yeah. It's more of it's like a mature, condescending voice.
Yes, of course.
Hello, my name is G.T. Bynum, and I want to keep America and this city locked down. I want to be the most progressive or conservative in America.
Mayor ever.
Check out my op-ed in the New York Times. And check out my main man, Bloomberg, and Obama, and Fauci, and whoop, there it is. Everybody vote for me.
I mean, that's what it is. That's G.T. Bynum. I'm sorry, back to you.
Okay,
We've been working on that for hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.
So with Mayor Bynum, he's put in a mask mandate here in our city where we are against, I believe that, more than 50% of the people here don't want it. And I don't know about you guys, but every time I go into a store in Tulsa, I'm not being asked to wear a mask. Isn't it quite interesting? There's been I think 1 or 2 occasions that I've gone in somewhere.
Oklahomies aren't down with it. We're not down with the
it's
mask.
kind of like telling us to get in a storm shelter when a tornado's coming by, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We just
we're more like, hold my beer and watch this.
Kinda,
come on now.
Hold my beer and watch this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's getting real.
At our church, we haven't made that an issue. We give it up, let people make a decision for themselves. And we've not had any cases of COVID-19 at
People
our church.
have got to rip you, though, on Facebook and say...
I got a lot of trolls.
And they'll say, well, how could you
Killing
possibly
people.
put your people, put their lives at
Killer.
risk? So here we have an expert who knows, she knows that Dr. Fauci's a corrupt individual. Feel free to ask her any questions that you want, because people are attacking you on Facebook, asking you, what, are you a doctor? Are you a scientist? So any questions you want to ask her, you have the mic.
Here's the question I have. How in the world does Dr. Fauci have all of these Facebook trolls that anytime you post something about him, they send it to their groups? I've had anytime I'll post something questioning Dr. Fauci, my profile gets sent into these groups, and then all of a sudden I get blasted with 900, 1,000 people that I'm not friends with or anything like that commenting. So where did this guy get a fan base so large?
He has $6 billion that he controls the funding. So anybody that wants to work that gets funded by NAIAD, he's got a lot of money paying those trolls. They pay them through this Quack Watch. These are people who can't get jobs any other way. Retract Watch, Quack Watch, Ivan Oransky. They've been doing this for decades.
This is a real thing, Quack Watch?
Yeah, literally. And they troll the internet. They control Google, as you heard. When you Google something, none of the truth comes, none of the data. And in fact, you don't have to look at my eyes for my honesty. Just read the books, read every single paper, get the actual data. Never once has Tony Fauci said one word about the data, the reference. Just stand up there and fight like a man and show the data. He can.
He constantly refers to people as conspiracy theorists. Whenever somebody brings it up, he'll immediately say, now for the conspiracy theorists out there that are talking about not wearing masks, it's conclusive that you need to wear a mask. Now 45 days ago, when I was telling you not to wear masks, I was more focused on we didn't have enough masks for everybody. Now I want goggles. It's a hot look. You go to goggles, you wear the mask. Some people say I look better with a mask on. You know what I mean? Some people say that. I mean, it's
the simple fact is viruses don't spread that way. Coronaviruses don't spread that way.
Oh.
We've been sitting here talking for the last hour and a half, and I haven't yet spit on this computer, and it's sitting a foot from me. That's the only way in water droplets that the virus could actually spread. So again, you're just spitting it back into your own lungs, and you're infecting yourself. You're making yourself sick, and he knows it, because then he can say, see, you didn't wear a mask. It's just like they used to do to us on the vaccines. If your vaccines worked, why do you care if I shoot aborted fetal tissues into myself or my children? If your vaccines work, why do you care if I don't wear them? If your mask is protecting you, why do you care? Where is there's no
logic
science behind one word he said. So he just, attacks the character of people or slanders them. Discredited and debunked is not disproven. Never has our work been disproven. In fact, every study that comes out shows we were more right than we were in the beginning. And that's a good scientific study. It raises more questions than it answers, and it extends and confirms knowledge. So why have the studies been shut down and the science settled? Well, science is never settled. We learn. Well, simple fact is coronaviruses don't spread 27 feet through the air, or live on surfaces for hours, or leap small buildings or tall buildings with a single bound. It's not how it works. Now, I'm sitting right here looking out at a pool, and a worker is wearing a mask, and there's nobody for hundreds of feet around him. This is ridiculous.
Okay, now we're going to go into rapid fire mode. We have 7 minutes left for 7 fast questions. So here we go. Recap one more time. Should we trust Dr. Deborah Birx?
No. Never.
That's pretty definitive. Okay.
I think that's what I don't know that I really caught that.
Should we trust Dr. Deborah Birx, and why? Why should we trust or not trust her? I just want to make sure I get it.
No, never. She's committed criminal fraud since the 90s. Why would she tell you the truth now?
Okay, question number 2. Dr. Fauci, should we trust him, yes or no, and why?
Absolutely not. Since 1984, he's lied to the American public about bird flu, swine flu, Zika, Ebola, HIV, AIDS, killed millions of people worldwide to huge financial gains with conflict of interest, never once penalized for his treasonous acts.
Should we trust the Center for Disease Control's Robert Redfield?
No, he was right there. Robert Redfield was right there with Deborah Birx in the 90s, injecting dangerous HIV vaccines on the military, experimenting on our military and first responders and lab workers.
Okay, now Attorney James is going to ask you a question. Dr. Z is going to ask you a question. Pastor Jackson is going to ask you a question, and then I get the final question. Dr. Z, what is your final question?
So, Dr. Judy, what are some action steps? What should people speak some truth?
What should we do?
What should we do?
What can we do?
What can we do? What will we do? I mean, give us out there, because so many people are listening right now and they're going, I just feel helpless. I feel helpless in this whole big something that's going on.
It's like we're on a dinghy, as you often talk about.
It's like watching a
this
movie
ocean of fear
that you can't stop, or it's like having a bad dream you can't wake up from. So what are some action steps, or what would you think would be some action steps? What should people do?
Take off the mask.
Okay, step 1.
Every single person take off the mask. Go in unison to the grocery store. All of you, tens of thousands of you, go and show up at your community grocery store. Start your own schools. Start your own mask-free zones, your own churches, as our churches have done here. Leave the churches and the institutions. Don't pay your money in the stores that are forcing you to kill yourself. Never again get another flu vaccine. Never again get another vaccine ever until they're tested safe the way I would. If you don't get to wear a mask, if you don't wear a mask and you don't get a vaccine and you go out of your house and you live your life, everybody will come out, and we will never see COVID-19, COVID 2021. We will build our immune systems, and free the people. Speak the truth in love, most importantly. We can't incite anger, because anger and fear are extremely immune compromising and don't serve us well. So just go out without your mask, speak the truth in love. You can buy our books, the Mask Book and Plague of Corruption, and just educate everybody.
Amen.
The Mask Book is the simplest book we've written yet, and it will educate you. Give it to everybody and educate people, and so you can take away the fear. Show them you're not getting sick. Singing at your churches, which is at outdoor rallies, at bars. I guarantee you, if you go into a bar with 100 or a restaurant with 100 people there and get your beer in Oklahoma and say no masks here, and we will support you. We will support you if you get fined by the states. Go and help in your communities and restore your communities.
I will also add, right now, at this very moment, we have a few people that are on to Dr. Fauci. Senator Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul is on to Dr. Fauci.
And, they make fun of the president for saying that most people get well from this. It is true. The vast majority, if you look at under age 18, the mortality rate's about 1 in a million. You look at age 18 to 45, the mortality rate's about 10 in 100,000. Above that, it increases. But interestingly, it is still pretty small, and the vast majority, even people up to 65 years of age, it may well be between 95 and 99% have a very mild case of this. So I'm not saying it's a benign disease. People do get sick and die from this, but your chances are good. We shouldn't live in fear forever. We should take normal precautions. We should assess the risks. People who are older should take more precautions. But we shouldn't, cover the faces of our children and say you're going to have to live your whole life with a mask on. We shouldn't do that, and the government definitely shouldn't mandate it.
You have Congressman Jim Jordan is on to Dr. Fauci. More and more. So I encourage you to send this show, and don't say you're going to do it or I forgot. Let's save our country. Send this show factory direct, eliminate the middleman. Send it direct to Senator Paul. Send it direct to Congressman Jim Jordan, and do it every morning. Because
send it direct to Senator John Mikovits. Send it direct to Senator Thompson, I believe, of Wisconsin. They're on to them as well, and they're trying to help us.
This is powerful. I'm putting all this on the show notes so people can send it out. Pastor, I want to go back to you, sir. Final question you might have for Dr. Judy.
So here's the question that I have. There's a lot of fear out there, a lot of people gripped and paralyzed by fear. And so there is a virus, but my question is, how contagious, how deadly?
For people just now tuning in, for people that maybe missed, let's recap that. How deadly, how dangerous is this coronavirus?
It's not. 99.6% of the people who are exposed to this coronavirus never even get sick. So that's less than half the usual influenza season, which we said. There is a virus. This virus has essentially nothing to do with COVID-19. It is not a causative agent. If for a virus to be a causative agent, everybody that gets the virus has to get the disease. And this is decidedly not true. It does not transmit as easy as they say at all, as I mentioned a minute ago. And we're no risk of transmission even 3 feet away. And the Centers for Disease Control and Fauci know it. If you're not, there's no such thing as an asymptomatic carrier of a coronavirus. You've cleared it, you're healthy, you're immune. Go out and spread your immunity. You are not spreading the virus.
James, what final question would you have? You're about ready to get into a legal battle with the city of Tulsa to lift this mask mandate. Many people are going to listen to this, and they're going to want to financially contribute to supporting this fight. You're obviously a smart guy, but you're getting your education up as it relates to mask mandates, as it relates to shutdowns, lockdowns. What question would you have here for Dr. Judy Mikovits?
Well, I look forward to seeing that, the 80-page book that you were talking about and the Dr. Meehan paper on the masks. I have a question for you that I'd like to I'd be grateful if you could explain your reaction to a headline that I'm going to read to you. All right. The headline is this: Fauci suggests goggles, eye shield for better protection against coronavirus. What do you think about that?
Coronavirus is, in fact, the nasal pharyngeal cavity. Your eyes are a different kind of immune system, immune privileged site. The only way you can get an infection in your eyes is to wear a mask and throw that. It's called uveitis. And you're literally, that's a chapter of our book. I'll email it to Clay, the electronic version. It's that expulsion because the mask doesn't fit right into your eyes. So this is even more insanity. You don't wear goggles for a coronavirus. They infect your nose, in your throat. That's the natural route of transmission.
My final question for you is this. I have been, this verse has been stuck in my mind, seared into my soul for 5 months. Since the Oklahoma City Thunder game got shut down. It's like all I can think about. Matthew 5:10 says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Again, blessed are those who are persecuted because of their righteousness, for being right, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So people always ask me, they say, "Clay, what's your motive?" I mean, come on, buddy. You're getting millions of views, people downloads, but what's your deal? So I said, let's make our book free, because the book Fear Unmasked I wrote got banned from Amazon. Thankfully, Elon Musk and others got it unbanned. Fear Unmasked got banned for hate speech. So when the book was available for purchase, I now made it available for free to download. So I don't want people to think I'm trying to benefit from this. And then they say, "I bet your businesses are booming." And I said, well, ironically they are, but that wasn't the plan. So you got me there. But my motive is that I have 5 kids who I love, and the thought of them living in a communist, permanent digital dystopia where they're controlled and surveillance technology and tracers and defunding the police and all the stuff that's going on. I just want to save America selfishly for my kids. That's all I want. So I'm asking you, what's your motive? Like, you're blowing me away. You make me feel so weak. I've seen what you've gone through. You're an inspiration to me. But what is your motive? What's your deal?
Well, I pretty much wrote my motive on page 90 of Plague of Corruption in an email I wrote to the head of the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, August 31st, 2011. And my motive is simple. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure. I made a promise. I made a vow to God and everybody in the world when I wrote this, that I would not let them perpetrate this plague of corruption on the victims who have already suffered the most from these heavily contaminated vaccines and blood supply. So that is my motive. Is I made that promise August 31st of 2011, and I'm keeping that promise.
Well, I'm going to be praying for you. I appreciate you hopping on the show. I can't wait to do part 2 with you next week, where we're going to go into a few more details of this, a little different approach. But again, if people want to reach out to you, do you have a website you want to direct people to where they can research you more?
Sure. We have plaguethebook.com, which is our 3 books are on there, or just different talks I've given, and the email of the info comes directly to my mailbox. So I answer as many as I can when people write me. Most people in the world know my phone number. I think Quackwatch posted my social security number.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I'm not hiding. I'm hiding in plain sight, and I love it if I can help people. So if there's anything I can do to answer questions, I'll get that book, the electronic version, in your mailbox today.
Thank you.
I'll get you the excipient list from vaccines and anything else you want, so that we can continue discussing these issues in a couple of weeks.
The Case Against Masks, 10 reasons why mask use should be limited. Get that book today on Amazon. Pick it up today. The Case Against Masks. Judy, on behalf of the entire Thrive Nation, Dr. Z, Lawyer James, the good pastor here, Dr. Meehan. I mean, just thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much to you all. It's been a great day already. Thank you.
Well, good.
Folks, think about what she just said for a minute. If what Dr. Judy Mikovits said is in fact true, that would mean that Dr. Deborah Birx and Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Redfield are very, very corrupt people. And they are exact kind of people we shouldn't be listening to during this time. But the fact is, folks, is that Dr. Anthony Fauci is either a liar or Dr. Mikovits is a liar. So I encourage you to do your research and then make a decision. Do your research and then make a decision. And if you go to timetofreeamerica.com, that's timetofreeamerica.com, I have cited everything that she just said all in one place. So do your research and then share everywhere. The time to share the truth with America is now. And now, without any further ado, we like to end each and every show with a boom. So here we go. 3, 2, 1.